Okay, well, this is Conant Show. It's 7:30, and we're by myself tonight. I'm teching for myself, and I've just went a half hour before I remember to turn on the recorder. So you have to bear with me, folks. It's a day. So to try to blend in this second half hour with what I had opened up with, I want to just say that I'm talking about building, and building things with form and function and purpose to be successful. And I'm using one of my pieces of carpentry as an example of that. And I'll shift over to it here. And so, here's kind of the finished product. This is kind of where we started tonight. And the idea is that very ancient in its kind of look. A good friend of mine, Greg Rotello, said, gee, you and Andy, you guys really built something that looks like it was, right out of the Middle Ages. And some of the building techniques involved are, but I have the added advantage of power tools, as I was saying, and all of these beams and stuff were lovingly taken from the forest by me with a chainsaw and ropes, and dragged them up the hill and cleaned them up. And building the staircase and the entryway onto the diagonal, that's kind of where we began tonight, which is something I had never done before, nor have I really seen in another structure. I hope to do it again. And so that was what gave me a thought tonight about how important it is how we divide our space. And we're going to revisit that for a second, just to give an idea of what it is to walk into that space. And I'm sorry to repeat this for those of you watching live, but this is, I'm recording here now. And that space there was the porch looking to the west. And the idea is that a couple could grow old on a love seat swing. That never did get put in. At least I didn't put it in. It may be there now. And one could look to the west and see the setting sun and have a drink and reminisce and this kind of thing. That was kind of the hope for this structure. But more importantly, as I like to show how the beam work and the posts show such a living quality, a living organic quality that it just I always get a thrill out of that. And then we're back to the vaulted ceiling, and this really is an uplifting visual. And it means a lot of things to me in different ways. To me, it is like a starburst, and looking up to the heavens. When you see the on a very, very clear night, and you see the stars of the Milky Way. And I've only seen this on top of a local mountain here and up north and out at the ocean at the Montauk Point many years ago on a very, very clear nights. In these different locations, you can see the sky in a wide expanse, and the stars come down. They're spraying at you, and that's inside this edifice. So when in this little 20-foot square room of a gazebo, when you look up, you have this rush of energy flowing over you, and that was a design benefit that we did not anticipate. We weren't really thinking about that. we're back to this detail of how things were put together on the roof there, and how to subdivide the space with these little cross members on the upper left and upper right. And what I really get a kick out of is how the water and snow over the years has created these really beautiful patternings on the inside of the building, because it seeps, you see. It doesn't leak, it doesn't drip, but it does seep through. And the resins of the cedar shakes create these blue and orange and all these different colors, and it's all responding to the cellular structure that I talked about earlier in the wood itself. And that's what's really interesting about working with wood, especially when it's green, because it's very much like flesh. It's like meat underneath the what do you call underneath the power tools, like my planer, my hand planer as a power tool, or skill saws and such, where you get a very clean cut on the green wood, and a little bit of the sap will rush out, or the moisture in the wood will evaporate in the sun, and you'll sort of see this, flesh-like quality to the wood as it's before it's dried and cured. So it's a living product. And there you can see more of the cross members, and when I started to talk about earlier about there's symbols in this sort of a structure, and what I see is in that T-like structure, where the rafters, the space gets divided to the lower portion, whereas the beams fan out, you have to occupy more space to support those slats that support the shingles, you see. So I put these rafters in that get abutted into a cross member, and they look like eyes and a nose to me. And what I see is, like, these spirit beings, looking down at us from the stars, but it's represented in this living wood. And it's a really kind of a nice, it's a comforting feeling in that you're not alone. If you don't feel alone, even though it's just a gazebo, but that's how powerful design is. And this is a detail of how I handled keeping the bugs out in one portion of this room. And we had to be very creative in how to keep the bugs out and how to block it, and so we made all those screens, and in this case, that's a screen that's sort of covering the doorway to the east, which is not on the diagonal. It's on the wall. Let's see where we go from here. And this is how we handled keeping the bugs out on the other side of the wall. And you can see the that is the diagonal where you actually enter and exit the building on the southwest corner. And that's looking above it. And it was a bit of a challenge to figure out how to block that up and stretch the screen so beautifully. You do a lot of problem solving in a structure like this, and I like to relate that to our relationships, in life, because I'm talking about building not only a building and structure with form and function and planning and such, but I'm also talking about how that relates to how we deal with each other, how we deal with authority, how we deal with life as it happens to us, and how we feel about different things. And I started the show tonight, talking about how the structure that we live in it's so important that the flow is healthy, that the feeling is healthy, that things make sense. I guess they call it shui or feng shui and all of that kind of thing. But you know what? There does make a lot of sense when you study how, say for example, you're in a room that is very closed and walled up and full of stuff. It can be very claustrophobic, right? It makes sense. And here is looking out to the southeast corner, and there's St. Francis of Assisi there in the sculpture out by that tree there, you can see. And I love the play of light out in this little structure, and the simplicity of it. And Dina was really kept it very elegant and very simple, and when she furnished it. And I guess it has had a couple of fabulous functions too. I think so. A couple her goddaughter, I think, got married in there, so that was really kind of cool. See, so when you're a builder and you build something, and then these kind of functions happen in them, it gives you a great deal of satisfaction. So that's now you're getting kind of a sense of the warmth and intimacy, even though this is a spring day or an autumn day. I'm not sure what time of year it is. You can see how it is still a kind of a cozy space. Like I was saying, it's really, really just simply and elegantly, little wicker furniture, and you get to see the little cow field back there, and I think that's a wood shed, or perhaps a run-in shed for the cows. I love how you can get a sense of the massiveness of some of my posts. All right, now those were some. I used every bit of these trees, and that's another thing, another element of building like this, is that nothing really went to waste. I didn't really have opportunity to use the branches. We did use the branches to make like wreaths and things of that nature, but it was, when I was doing the bulk of the work was in the spring and summer, so a lot of it, wasn't really. A lot of the brush parts of the tree, ended up as kindling and firewood, which is still, makes a beautiful scent. That it was that red cedar that we used. And here we are looking to the west, and there's that there's a tree there that has an arm. It's like he's bending his elbow, and he's got he almost has a face there where it's blowing at you, like, or whistling or howling or something. And that's another powerful expression in nature. And kind of winding this back to some of the themes that I was thinking about. It's been a tough day today, because of the past few days there's been a bit of controversy surrounding the TV studio and who gets to use it and what kind of content should happen. Now we're supposed to have free speech. And some of my challenges now is that the town wants to sort of regulate how what guests we bring on, or if we can even bring guests onto the show, which really kind of jams my action up, because I never know if I'm going to have a guest or not, because I do have a life out there in the world, and getting people to come on my show can be impromptu, last minute, and sometimes I can book somebody weeks in advance, But everybody has a life out there, and Wednesday at 7 is not always easy to book. And like tonight, the young band that from Canada, probably I should have taken a phone number from somebody. I don't even know if they had a cell phone with them, but I can't imagine who wouldn't. So I kind of dropped the ball on that. But anyway, I might not have been allowed to have them in the studio tonight because of the controversy over the past weekend, and so now there's a more of a desire to by the town, on the part of the town, to regulate or control the studio, and I'm not sure quite how this will all come up and come out. I'm just sort of touching on it that's why I wanted to relate this particular structure, this carpentry, to how we build our relationships, and I think that as an appeal to you, the audience, you're benefiting from the work that producers do by whatever new information you get, or whatever fun thing you see, or a new piece of information about what's going on in our town or in our county. And part of being involved with live TV and public access TV is we're also documentarians. We're documenting, and we're journalists. We're exposing really both the good, the bad, and the ugly of our experience here in our community in this town. So specifically, how to report on that today is that there is a conflict between the rental of the community center to a summer camp for kids, and the facilities are shared with the TV station. So if you need to use the bathroom, you have to, we're being told as producers to go outside to the porta potties, and to insulate and isolate any contact with the camp program. And I'm appealing for a better solution to that. And we also we're now have to be card carrying TV producers, to participate with the use of the studio. And that's kind of a new development in Bill McKenna's effort to regulate the situation. Now, I think that that we need a serious dialogue between the producers and the town about really transparency of what the legal ramifications are, and regarding who is responsible ultimately for the TV studio. Now, I've read the producers' agreement, and I've read the other agreement that I participated with today in order to be able to go on and do a show. Really, on the surface of things, the agreements look pretty straightforward, pretty innocuous, but there are some things that do challenge me, and that is that it's very opaque for me to understand the command and control parts of all of this. I know that we have older equipment that is not necessarily a bad thing. These old cameras are very good cameras, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the the old mixing board here is a perfectly good audio board, and so we have components that are perfectly good, but then the delivery system, somewhere between the camera and the modulator, which goes to the cable network, gets a degraded signal sometimes and bad connections. So whether it's a maintenance issue or whether it's we need some new components, that all needs to be explored and with a lot more meaningful conversation. My personal feeling is a lot of these old recording decks are obsolete, and we need a really good server quality computer and some external hard drives, so that recording all of our content for playback during the week can be done as MP4 files instead of burning DVDs, which is frequently not very successful here. I've lost a lot of shows because the Roland DVD recorder failed from one point to another. So some of that is my experience or lack of experience, and some of that is failures on the part of the equipment. But moving right along, let's see what else we can look at here. Yeah. Now, this is looking to the southwest, and now you're looking sort of right through the entryway. And you really kind of get a sense of how it all holds itself up, and the geometry of coming in and out of a structure on the corner as an entryway instead of on a wall really changes the feeling and flow. And it was a very successful design that I hope to use in the future, because as you enter the structure, it sort of spins you in, almost like you're in a Nautilus shell, and that's kind of a pretty cool thing. And let me give us another image. All right, that's upside down or to the side. Let's keep going. All right, light play. See, this is what's great about, some of this is planned and some of it is not planned. So here I painstakingly oriented the building. I mean, we had a compass out and we got it, found where true north was and where magnetic north was, and we tried to anticipate some of the action of the sun. But in the end, until you build it, you don't know what'll come. And so here we have the light play of the sun and the shadows coming over the steps and the railing, and the camera is kind of playing with us too. So you're getting that real sort of deep perspective, and you can get a little bit of an appreciation of how we tied together the flooring and the steps themselves. There's some rocks. That's our landing. I made a good portion of that, and at the time we kind of salvaged rocks that were in other areas of the property, and dragged them around and set them and made them level, made a level landing pad to walk up to those steps. And let's see, there's you can see my shadow of me taking the picture there. Look at that. stepping along. I love how the shadow, the wood in the shadow there is blue. I get a kick out of that. I don't know why. And if you look at the detail of the butt ends of those rafter beams, you will see that I carved a heart, the symbol of a heart, on each one of them, all the way around the whole building. And that was because, Dina, that's her symbol. Actually, that's her goes back to her great-grandfather. And the symbol is not a heart in the Cherokee sense. It was kind of a clover. So you could see them as clovers, and put together as threes or four, at the pointy end. But anyway, that symbol, as a heart, was carved into the heart wood of each of those poles. And I carved those with a great deal of danger, using a router, just hand holding a router with various bits, and that's how I achieved that effect. And now you can also get a sense of how the beams, all being natural wood and all being different dimensions, gives a waviness and so that the shingles and their support structure underneath the lattice of those slats follow those curves, follow those differences, and give you these real subtle but very, very lovely swales in the roof itself. And that was another real interesting outcome in this building, which was a little bit of an experiment, in addition to really having thought it out. And we did. We spent quite a bit of time just thinking it out. That's another lesson for life. We really do need to think things out. Think things through. We need to slow down and appreciate the situation that we're in, the health that we're in, and then decide on putting something together in terms of agreements with other people, or taking on a responsibility. Do I really want to take this responsibility on? Is it good for me? That kind of thing. Let's see what else we can look at. More hearts. More hearts. Here, I'll put my mug back on for a second, and just so that, my mentor and friend, Paula Gloria Barton, was, always saying, it's good to contact the audience from time to time. It's nice that they get your voice, but they got to see you too. So I'm saying hi again, and we'll go back to the image because I think it's more interesting. Anyway. Righto. So, more hearts. Like I was saying, we just got the ladder up there and I carved away very, very carefully, I might add. To use a router that spins the bit at about 80,000 RPM, you cannot let go, because it will make a mess of you, and if it does, if you let go of that spinning object. So the wood, especially on the butt end of a pole like these, will grab the bit, and sometimes grab it severely and will wrench your wrist. I really, really took some risk here in accomplishing that part of the task. But it's a symbol of the heart. It's a symbol of love. You know, and I thought, okay, Dina, that really is pretty cool use of that part of the structure. So I made that effort, and I think it came out pretty darn cool. I think that's a neat looking thing. You're not going to see that anywhere else. And yeah, let's keep moving here. And that's the entryway from the east. And very, very different feeling, as you can see, from entering the building from the corner as opposed to entering it on the wall. And so you have a really a kind of a very different attitude. To me, this is much more. When you have those two pillars on either side there, holding up that little rain fly, that little entryway, gives you a sense almost like classical building, yeah, and then the way the space is divided around the door, those rectangular shapes created, by the screening and by the nature of how that wall side was framed, really give you a sense of kind of a traditional, house. But it's an open air gazebo. And you can also get a sense of how the space is divided. You can see all the way through to the porch on the other side, through the interior space, and how kind of welcoming that interior space is. And there's the hearts all the way around. I got every last one of them. I spent a lot of time on that. And then we're back to the beginning. And that's what it looks like when you're entering the structure from the diagonal. It almost looks like a pyramid. And that has a whole kind of energy in itself, that pyramidal energy. Yeah. So I'm going to run on a little bit longer here, folks. I got a late start, and so I have about 20 minutes to fill here. It was kind of nice to revisit that image and that part of my life, and the lessons that I learned in building that particular structure. And it was all about the wood. It was all about the wood. And I had not really done that before. Now, I had made lots of teepee poles. I had done that plenty of times. But I had not really made framing timbers on this scale before. And that was really interesting to me on really learning how the wood wanted to be handled. Because, as you work with a material, you have to meditate. You have to sit with it. You have to look at it and understand it. Like if I make a cut in this location, is it going to split? Will it have integrity? Will it hold together? I have to think forward because, especially on this red cedar, those knots where a branch was growing came out once and it cures and hardens over, a few months. You can't nail into that. You have to drill into that. It's very, very hard. So you have to think through, like chess moves, how am I going to put this thing together, and how are these parts and pieces? And so there's a lot of going back to the woodpile and selecting and rejecting. And that's another thought, in selecting or rejecting a condition or a behavior, what works, how do we approach a situation or a confrontation and de-escalate it, or better improve the feeling. We have to or if you're crafting paperwork, for a legal document, that's another, there's a lot of editing. That's really what it is when building a structure. Is it's a lot of it is editing, making corrections to move forward with an idea, or to move forward with an end product. Our lives, I think I started to figure this out one day. All right, so there's 365 days in a year. How many days is that in 10 years? So I'm really bad at math right now. But in any event, it's not a whole lot of days. I think it's, would it be 3,650? Is that how that works? So if you have 1 year and you times that by 10, you add a zero. So that's 10 years is 3,650 days. That's really not that much if you think about it. So say you live 100 years, so that's 30,000 days. Give or take 6,500 more days. So that's 36,500 days. It's 100 years. Our average lifetime in the United States is somewhere between 70 and, 77 years, between 65 and 75 years. I don't know what the statistic is. I do know that, cancer is probably the top killer, after maybe a heart attack, but then, you die of a heart attack no matter what you're dying of, heart failure. And the idea that I'm sorting through here is, we don't really have that much time. Human being, 100 years is, considered pretty much like the max, for most of us. There's legend of people living 200 and 300 and 500 years, and that there's a few of them still hanging around, and in isolated villages and pristine environments and all that kind of thing. But our wisdom is truncated as a civilization, because we're not designing lifestyles. We're not thinking through our civilization scale problems or structures. How do we do things, and how do we do them correctly is a huge, undertaking when you start dealing with things like civilization scale infrastructures. Feeding 9 million people in Manhattan, How do you get the food to all those people? You know, there's the trucking, there's the trains and planes and ships, you know, growing food from all over the world being, you know, shipped to New York City or Tokyo or LA or Woodstock or any other community. And the question becomes, you know, how reliable are our systems? And to a large degree, so far, we're looking at some pretty good reliability. You know, we've had some terrible failures. The Valdez spill or the BP spill or you know, oil spills in the ocean or on land, nuclear accidents, Fukushima, what's going on with that? You know, we've got serious problems, and we have to wonder, you know, who's designing the solutions? And I would think that our greatest resources, you know, beyond arable farmland and clean water and air, you know, these are not just our, you know, resources and commodities, these are essentials to have. But, you know, given that we have created now problems with our technology in our environment, you know, the end result of that is we have designed for ourselves a throwaway society. Now, Marshall McLuhan would talk about that, you know, and various other futurists like Alvin Toffler and Future Shock. Great book, you know. It's really appropriate. I think everybody should reread it if you haven't. And you know, I am living what I read about in ninth grade, which in, you know, Alvin Toffler's Future Shock was a fascinating read to me. It's a thick read, and it was a hard read, and it was required reading, and it should still be required reading because it really explains what we are all really experiencing, and that is called technological thrust. All right, we are moving so fast, folks, with our technology, and nobody is on the playing field, on the, you know, like talking to you tonight, nobody is really addressing the impact of these advanced technologies, the accelerated speed with which they're developing and being introduced into our biology, into our lives, into our psyches. And, you know, these are some of the questions that I want to ask, and that is anybody thinking this through? What's the end result? And let's just take a specific hot button issue, which is the Wi-Fi, the 5G rollout, cell towers. You know, you can't call them cell phone towers. These are just emitters at this point, frequency emitters. You know, multifunction towers. You know, going to be netting the landscape where there'll be cell towers, you know, everywhere in the United States, possibly Canada and Mexico as well. You know, and then, you know, besides that as a outcome, what's the purpose of saturating our air, unregulated saturation of our atmosphere with microwave energy, our very high frequency radio broadcast, radio energy, or electromagnetic energy, or there's a lot of different ways of describing these field phenomena, but we do know that they are impacting the health and guidance systems for bees and birds. And what does that say to us with this increase in cancer everywhere, and autism and other, autoimmune conditions? We're bioelectric creatures. So I think, it's be really smart of everybody to start really questioning the sensitivity of the body electric, of our bioelectrical field, which composes the non-physical parts of our being. It's one thing to measure your muscle tissue. It's another thing to measure your nerve tissue, and this kind of thing in your bones. But when you start talking about the intangible parts of us, like our emotional fabric, our emotional construction, our intellectual constructions, our emotions and intellect and intuition and all of these other parts of our body that are invisible, all work on those same principles of frequency. Energy, directed energy, or general, omnidirectional energy. But that's what our emotions are. That's what our thoughts and feelings are. And this is all going to be blending. And you're soon, we're very fast moving towards technology that you won't be able to differentiate between your own thought and your perception of reality, and an implanted or a broadcast thought and a perception, an implanted perception of reality. Maybe you think I'm pretty extreme here, but I don't think so. This kind of technology is very real. And we have to really wonder, to what end is all of this being designed? And who's designing it? When, the great questions, who am I? Why am I here? What does the future have in store for me? What am I doing to add to harmony? What am I doing to add to confusion? When I'm gone, how will I be remembered? These kinds of questions, the big questions, need to be applied to what we're collectively doing with the advancements of technology and who benefits from it. Because I don't see my children benefiting from being saturated with directed energy, Wi-Fi, high frequency bandwidths. I don't see that as a good thing. Which brings me, in the last few minutes here, to something that I really want to impress upon you, and that is not all old technology is bad, not all new technology is good, not all old technology is good, and not all new technology is bad, okay? So that means we need discernment. We have to discern, all right? And we're looking very, very quickly for the convenience, mind you. It's always the convenience of a product. These new products that are Wi-Fi wirelessly driven products to watch, media on your computer screen or on your home entertainment system, is being developed to liberate you from your cable bill. Okay, because the idea, the promise of this new technology is that you'll get away from the cable bill. Well, you know what? You're going to have to still pay for this thing, man. It'll still cost you. It'll be a different bill, but maybe a higher bill for something that requires maintenance with real human beings to go out and check the lines and repair them when there's storm damage or whatever isn't such a bad thing. That adds to the economy. The other nice thing about cable, which is, theoretically what we're supposedly broadcasting over is cable, but, there's question about that as well, is it is more secure for your intellectual property and content and such, harder to rob it over a cable in a physical, fiber optic pathway than it is once your content is being broadcast through the airwaves. Any sophisticated enough piece of equipment and operator can pick it up and rob that signal and do something with it. It's a little bit harder when you have a physical medium such as cables and wires that can be a little more secure in terms of maintaining privacy and maintaining control of one's intellectual property and say video and audio content. That's a lot of thought there. Where are we going with all of this? And I don't really have answers. What I'm looking at doesn't look good. I worry about my own health with the various Wi-Fi conditions that I know that I get exposed to. I wonder if my sleep patterns are being disrupted. I wonder if the cramping in my legs is, Lyme disease or just working too hard and not stretching properly. Is it something simple or is it something more insidious than that? Likely answer, all of the above. Yeah, it's all of it. Sure. But do we really need to throw away our cable access or our cable product, in favor of something that is going and is hurting us, but is definitely going to damage our human population? Not to speak of confusing the bees and the birds from their natural navigational systems. So that's the question before us. I think having, cable companies to really carry the bulk and load of our media needs is the smartest way to go. And I think maybe tonight I'm launching an idea. I'm launching the idea of love your cable, love your fiber optics, demand that it be instated and reinstated and protected as a viable technology, as a safer technology than all of this wireless impetus, all of this wireless technology that's really being jammed down our throats, whether we like it or not, without full disclosure as to the dangers that it presents to our bioelectrical field and our health and well-being. And what kind of emotional constructions is it making? And lastly, I believe that if you're going to build a structure, you build it strong. You build it safe. You build it with intention. And you build it beautifully. And that's that sense of aesthetic, which I started this whole conversation with tonight. You know, if you're going to build something, and you're going to live in it, you know, whether it's your home or a little gazebo or an office building, how does that flow? How does the edifice strike your being? How does it shape your feelings? Because they all do. They all do. Everything, you know, think about the wonder that you feel if you go into a canyon out west or in a cave up north. You know, when you're in these natural structures that have been carved by the wind and carved by, you know, rivers and God knows what other, you know, phenomena out there that makes these natural wonders, and you're in them and you're struck with the awe of the power of the forces that made that canyon or that cave or that sea cliff or that mountain range, you know, and then you know, that gives us a foundation in our being. All right, an emotional foundation or an intellectual foundation, or you call it a spiritual foundation, but it gives us a kind of a foundation to build upon in our thoughts and in our thinking. And that's where I want to leave you off tonight, is to really start considering the foundations of our thinking, the foundations of our technology, economy, how things are put together, and is it beautiful? If it's not a beautiful thought, if it's not a beautiful edifice, if it's not a beautiful automobile even, I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's something that is made, and it is made well, and it is made with care, and it's the design element is beautiful, it makes a difference, you know, in our psyche. And that ultimately drives our health. So is this Wi-Fi something beautiful? Well, it's invisible for one, and that's kind of the neat thing about it is, well, you know, we don't have any wires to worry about. Well, I don't know. I know that wires are not the most beautiful looking things, but the form and function of it, that fiber optic cable is not going to emit that kind of radiation that will give you cancer. So, you know, I gave you a lot to think about here tonight, folks, and I hope you enjoyed seeing my gazebo and my conversation about how I built it. And you know, I want to remember my friend Andy Nixon and give him a shout out there. And he's recovering from surgery himself. And I love you, Andy. And get well soon. I haven't had a chance to get and see you. But anyway, life is short. We need to build strong foundations and beautiful constructions in our relationships. And I'm putting that out so that we all start thinking a little better about our town, about our TV studio, about our gardens, about our school systems. You know, it's all related. It's all related. If we want kids to be healthy, smart, successful adults, you know, then we have to start making those parts of life that are tough to deal with manageable for these young people, so that they don't just not care about their bodies and not care about what damage they might be doing with the lure and the seduction of opiates or any number of, you know, chemicals made in a laboratory. You know, we really need to we really need to think better thoughts and come up with some better designs for living, and really hold our leaders and our industrial leaders and our government and our town government, hold them responsible for the level of technology that we're being exposed to. Maybe in another show I'll come up with some ideas on how to do that. But that's where I'm leaving you off with tonight. Thanks for watching Conant Show. I hope to be here next week, and perhaps I can dig up these kids from Canada to play some music for us. And I'm really sad that they didn't come tonight, but, well, I guess I had to talk about something else then, didn't I? All right, everybody, be safe. I hope your 4th of July was a fun one, and I hope you got to be with your families. And good health, and think good thoughts, and we'll see you next week. Have a good night.